Hello, welcome to Liberty Conversations, episode 007.
007. Hello.
You've been waiting for that one.
Hello, Mr. Bond.
We've been missing for a couple of weeks. We probably could try and fill in the gaps. You've been away in Lesotho.
Yeah. I'm back about a week and a half, and we had a great time in Lesotho. There was 4 of us that went over, a little bit of a crack commando squad. Went over.
You always use that language, crack commando.
I love it.
It's more like a nursing home.
It's more
expedition.
It's more like it's like 4 people missing their carers. And but we go over, and the reason why I say that, we always have a little sort of project or mission that we can complete.
Yeah.
And
there's a crew isn't it, like that? You go together each time you go.
Yeah. So like there's usually about 6 of us that have been consistently going, and 6 lads, and we just have built up that by going away together and achieving something together, and that we've built up that brotherhood, I guess. That we go and we have great laugh. Honestly, we laugh for that. And everyone that comes near us seems to come into that vortex or something of just.
Sheila, I was chatting to Sheila in the week after he has left. You were going to Cape Town. He went on a little holiday after Lesotho, and she was still buzzing from having you there, but she was trying to remember all the jokes. She's trying to say them back to me. She's trying to keep them in her memory just because she was like, them guys have a ministry of laughter. Just when they're around. She's saying, what did she say? Frank was down at getting some dinner or something, got a pizza, ordered a pizza, and they're like, do you want to cut into 8 slices? And he was like, oh no, I wouldn't eat 8, just cut it into 4. But she's still laughing at it like a week after years are gone.
Frank is one of them a minute. And you know what? It was like we built a couple of people from different schools in Tala that was on a mission trip before. They left money to build a playground in the village for the kids in school in Halabasa school. And so with them guys doing that end of it, we were able to go over and actually get all the material and work for that on our time there. And at the end of the week, we ended up with the chief officially opening the playground in the school, and just to hear and see those kids' laughter was just, we were blown away that something so simple could really produce this type of laughter. And one of the things that I heard after, so the school, our school in Halabasa, one of the days they were gone, every kid gone from the school, which was great for us because we could just work in the yard. And then the next day was a bank holiday, so we 2 days where the second day we could paint everything. And but the reason why they were gone the first day, they were gone to another school called St. Charles, and they were gone for a spelling competition. So some of our kids, like Puello in their one day family, he won whatever it was, and a couple of other kids. And but this teacher sent out on the WhatsApp, or their WhatsApp, that there were all the other principal. The principal sent out that we'd love you to come and have the next competition in their school because we want the kids of St. Charles to experience their playground.
That's awesome.
So they had something to nearly present and be really, really, I don't know, boast about in some way. Do you know what I mean? We have a playground, so get the other kids over. We'll have the spelling competition, and the kids can play on the.
We haven't been great at the old social media with one day and stuff, but we have like Becky on board now working to help us look after the project, and so we need to just get some videos from that and post them up on the Instagram or on the Facebook or stuff. So I know she's working on that because it's great to see. We send through the videos to the WhatsApp chat, and you see just the.
We have that one where the chief cut everything, and then the kids done a dance for us and a song for us, just to say thanks to everybody that contributed. So it's brilliant. So anyone that's listening that has contributed to this, I'm telling you, it will echo. That line of Gladiator. It will echo in eternity. This will echo in eternity. This joy and laughter that was produced.
That's deadly. You know what I find? We spend so the last episode I put out was I don't know if you got a chance to listen to, you were away, but it was like an interview with Jill that we recorded.
I did. I was
years ago. And when I think about it, our second episode I think was with Chris and Sheila, and probably in most episodes we spoke about Lesotho, which is probably more than I expected to speak about it. I don't know why, but because it's a huge part of us. We have a church there. Like we've 3 community church locations in Ireland and one in Africa. And
hello.
And then I suppose we're either on our way to a trip there or we're on our way home from it. So it's it's a big part of who we are. So delighted you are out there. That's awesome.
And we went down to Cape Town for a couple of days, and I think everyone in Cape Town has this conspiracy that we be so nice and we make everyone's experience in our place so incredible that they'll tell everybody about it when
That's
they
the
go
kind of
home.
welcome you got when you were there, was it?
It's like
off
it's just
everybody.
like they're all in on it. You know what I mean? Whether you go to a local little place for a cup of coffee or you go to a tourist place. And I was there in 2005, and when I came home this time, everything Sharon said, everything you said to me about that place, you said in 2005. And because I said to Sharon when I came home in 2004, I'd never want to leave Ireland. God would have to write it in the sky for me to ever leave my country. But I said if he said pick anywhere to live in the world, I'd pick Cape Town.
Well,
yeah.
well, I've never
Incredible,
been. I've never
incredible,
been. Maybe on
lovely,
some trip.
Beautiful people, it's like they have a gift of hospitality.
Right.
That's what it was like for us.
Well, that's great, man. It's good to have you back as well. We had then, intended to get together for a podcast, but then my granddad passed away. Just the week that you were back, and then we had his funeral, and it was I don't know, it was a profound kind of experience. So I got to lead his funeral service or whatever around my family and help my family move through that space of grieving / celebrating, processing, and it was huge. It was weird. It was a huge honor to do, and then also like probably one of the most surreal, kind of strange experiences of my life as well. So in the mix of all of that, we didn't get any podcasts recorded. But back in action.
And just to comment on the funeral, it was. I know them feelings. I've done my own dad's funeral, my mum's funeral. Well, I spoke at them. Sorry, but it's like through it all, like I know it's the same for you, Rob. That like your family look to you, even though you're probably not the oldest, or you're the nephew or a grandson, and it's just like the way I always fought. Like I always remember looking at when my dad was dying, I was looking at going to all my brothers and sisters, and I'm like, I'm the second youngest here, guys. Do you know what I mean? But somehow I'm the pastor. I'm the guy that God has been raising up, and for moments like this, you're dead right. It's the highest privilege that you don't even know it, but when you're in it, it's that you're dead right. It's that surrealism, and then just that realism of that raw family emotion that we're all in this together. It was lovely, and you've done an amazing job. I'm not plumazing you. I said it to you privately that like I was sitting there, I was bursting with pride. Right, I was like, I think I felt John and Teresa's pride, your mum and dad pride. And when we say something about theirs, your granddad, I was like, I just want to say, like, don't you all agree? And and I know everyone was really proud that. Do you know what it is, Rob, as well? Like no matter what our families are like, whatever, they somehow they have somebody in their midst that represents something that's beyond them, or someone that's beyond them, and it's nearly like, here, get our Rob out there, or get our Noel out there. I don't know, because no one can speak what we speak. No one can do what we do, and certainly not in my own family. None of us can do a funeral. None of us can officiate a marriage or whatever. And it's like, oh, hey, Noel, or hey, Rob, like, boom.
It's weird that you find yourself doing those things, though, isn't it? It's just like, especially, I suppose, when it's around family. It feels maybe a bit different if it's like other people. But a huge honor, and probably like maybe it's a kind of segue into what we want to speak about today. But like, it's an expression of love, because there's probably moments where you think, man, I just don't want to do this. I just want to be like the rest of my family, and just attend the thing. You know what I mean? Agree. But you're like, am I positioned in some way to show love to these people who I do love, who probably know I love them just because we're family, right? But to be able to show them love by doing something on their behalf or for them, and that's what we want to talk about today. We've been on this journey interspersed with Lesotho stories, but of the loves of liberty, or like our values. We started with this one that we're loved by God. The whole podcast on that, if you didn't listen to it yet, go back and check it out. It's the beginnings of all things. Everything starts with just God's initiation and his relentless kind of pursuit of us. Then we moved into love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind and strength. How that can seem like a strange command, but how it's actually the greatest gift to say it's possible to love me with all your heart, soul, mind and strength, meaning that they're not occupied by something else that's gonna let you down. Then the other side of that, so when Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment? He says, this one, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind and strength. And then he doesn't just leave it there. He says, and the second is like it, you shall love your neighbour as yourself. So that's the next love we want to look at or spend time discussing today. What does it mean to love your neighbour as yourself? What's your first thoughts, man, as we say that?
Oh gosh, help me there.
Yeah, there's a million, isn't
I thought you were going to lead me in there. Wow. You know, I was just speaking this morning, even in church, Rob. I was speaking about Ephesians, and it says this, that God will give you the power to understand the length and the breadth and the height and the depth of the love of God as found in Christ Jesus. I'm like, I can't even understand this love unless he gives me the power to understand. I can have interaction with it, I can experience it, but like at the end of the day, to really understand this love that's so wide and deep and high and long, that I need his understanding to give me to get around it. And you know, experiencing God's love for me and me able to love him, and just this total, you know, cycle of being loved, and love has to always flow out. See, love always produces. So it's not stagnant if it's love, and this love then ends up like splashing out on other people that like are your neighbours. You know, your immediate neighbours, your community, like they get the overflow of this love. And yeah, for me, you know, it's just like you know, Psalm 23, my cup overflows. Or you have enough for me, like, and enough for my family, but it overflows into other people's lives, like I am.
And it's I think as well, it's Jesus saying, if we go back to the words again, at one time when he responds with this, love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, love your neighbour as yourself, it's in response to this question, what's the greatest commandment, right? And then after Jesus says those two things, he doesn't pick one, he picks two sides of the same coin. I think he's effectively saying these things are connected, which we can explore, because it's a part where John says, well, you can say you love God, but if you say that and then hate your brother at the same time, is the love of God actually in you? You know, you need to question those things. But effectively, he's being asked, like, what's the most important thing that God has ever said to man? Like, you know, and then he says, not only is this the most important, then Jesus responds after it, he says, all the law and the prophets hang on these two things, right? So I mean, all that's come to date, all that's in Scripture, all that's in the Old Testament, all the stories there, all the law that's written of how man should interact with God, how we should interact with each other, all the prophets that then came after and expressed the heart of God to people, trying to draw people to himself, trying to portray this is what the world should look like if we were restored in relationship with God and relationship with one another. He's like, they can be summed up in these two things: love God and love people. And that's huge, right? Because I don't know if you're listening in and I asked you, like, just randomly, if you hadn't just heard that little speech and I asked you what's the most important thing in the world, I don't know, you might say, well, like, I don't know, just to be happy. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Or just to have your needs. Or if you were humble, do you know what I mean? Or if you were more ambitious, you might say, well, like to have enough money, or to be able to look after your kids, or, you know, but if we really push it, what Jesus is saying is, most important thing is to love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then the second is like it, is love your neighbour as yourself. Meaning, if I want to measure the importance of my life or the level of meaning for my life, they're measured, I think, in those two things. Yeah, like, so it's the thing that matters. It's like, do I stand over today? Today, did I have opportunities to love others that I either took or didn't take? And do I see that that's the measure of what actually matters in eternity? I don't know how to describe it. It's like words of the maker of reality. Do you know what I mean? Who holds reality, this cosmos, this world together, is saying, this is the most important thing you can do with your life. This aspect we're going to look at today is love your neighbour as yourself. Now, we can just hear that and it can just wash over our heads, and especially even in today's world, could be people here living in apartment blocks that don't even know their neighbours' names. Yeah. I'm lucky enough we live on a little cul-de-sac that we grew up in, and I know our neighbours. Do you know what I mean? They're involved in our lives. But
do you think, Rob, we know a smidgen of this love, or maybe in wider capacities, that like some of the like expressions that when you're talking there, I'm like, you know, it's that love that it mirrors it in some way, you know, that mothers and fathers have, that like they sacrifice things of their own lives for others, i.e. their kids, say, like their kids, and you know that the dad will work, you know, morning, noon and night to put food on the table of others, send kids to college. Like I remember my sister, one of my older sisters, Joan, telling me that she knew there was times that my mum went to bed hungry, but they never did. And I'm like, but God's love then
Yeah.
is,
It's like expansive, isn't it? Because in some ways we do that naturally. So we have a point of contact to say, well, this is what
it
that
can
kind
look
of
like,
talks about. But your neighbor, there's a parable, isn't it? Well, then at one point somebody's like, well, who's my neighbor? And that's where the
yeah,
parable of the good Samaritan
yeah,
comes in,
yeah,
where it was like a priest and a Pharisee both passed by the guy in need, but a Samaritan who should have been the guy's enemy
yeah,
is the one who looks after him. So it extends it beyond to Jesus. It's beyond. Here's the people who everybody else will just love. You'll love those who love you back, right? Or you'll love those who are connected to you like familially. Do you know what I mean? Once it's not too costly.
yeah.
But Jesus extends that beyond. I suppose even to the extreme, right, where he says, you know, you've heard it said, whatever, love those who love you, but hate your enemies. But I tell you, love your enemies.
Yeah.
Right? And so
yeah.
it's like this
Yeah.
life is measured in love. And so if you want to know what actually matters in life, because we all at some point struggle with that kind of existential, look, what's life? What's life all about?
Mm-hmm.
It's about being loved by God, loving him in return, and loving your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really simple, right? But it's simple as in like a simple statement to make, but really hard to live out, right?
Yeah.
For a million reasons.
Yeah, like I was thinking before you said that, I was thinking like, what if your neighbor is like a noisy, nosy, obnoxious?
Yeah.
Do you know, what about that neighbor? Like, well, the command is to them, is
Yeah.
to us, to them as well. Do you know what I mean? That it's gonna cost you something to love that type of.
I'm beginning to think that that's one of the defining characteristics, or I've been thinking it for a while, but I'm becoming convinced of it, that we can possibly only actually call it real love, or maybe greater love, when there's a cost to it, right? It's really easy for me to say I love you when everything is going good, but if you've annoyed me, if you've let me down, if you've hurt me,
I still love.
Am I still going to choose to love you?
Because the cost is to you.
Yeah.
So it's putting yourself in second place.
There's always a cost, and it's a nature of us as Christians following the example of Jesus, who to love us was costly. It cost him his life, right? So it wasn't just, I just love you. It was like, I love you, but there's always someone who bears the cost of love. And so as we go to love people, you can talk about it and it sounds all lovey-dovey, and it sounds like, I don't know, the hippie movement or something, peace and love, and everybody just love. But in the nitty-gritty of it, in like dealing with people and people's sin, and me and my sin, and them sparking off each other, like, to actually love people with consistency, I think is actually one of the most difficult things to do, unless it's empowered by those first two commands of being loved by God, of loving him with all our heart, soul, mind and strength, so we're satisfied in him, our identity's in him, our needs are being met in him, so we're not necessarily looking to the other to meet them and crushing them under that expectation when they let us down. Instead, we're able to reflect the love that we have from God to the other, and do that with consistency. Like, there's a source of it that's not dependent on whether they recognize it, or whether they accept it, or they reject it, or they appreciate it. Because in some ways, right, it's very easy to go and love people who are appreciative, but there's probably a lot of times where we were just called to love people who never even recognize it, or even instead of recognize it, call it the opposite.
Yeah,
you know?
That's tough, Rob, isn't it?
It's a hard, man.
Yeah.
This Christianity stuff isn't for wimps.
I was just going to say that. This ain't for no
that's
wimps.
That's what you're saying, is it? That's
yeah,
right.
it ain't for no wimps. This is like real stuff. And you know what? Like, I read, like, the reason why the hippie movement didn't work in the end is because humans were involved. Because there's nobody, the utopia that the people thought they could make society cannot happen with just society.
Yeah.
It has to have that outside king of the universe kind of love poured in for it to happen. And the reason why it failed, it was because we're human. And that human is like, I'm loving me and my for and no more.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone else get a bit of it, it's like, I probably have a different agenda even to give that bit of love. But this love that Jesus calls us to can only be powered, and the expressions of the love can only be powered by the one who gives the love.
Yeah.
And therefore we become conduits of that love to neighbours.
Yeah. And it's so we've spent our time, I know we talked on one of the podcasts I think what attracted me to Rialto early days was I was seeing that stuff in action, right? Here's
Mm.
people who aren't just talking about it. They're in Dolphin's Barn. There's this in Rialto. There's this community church of people who actually love their neighbours. Do you know what I mean? So you started Rialto
Yeah.
as a space to love your neighbours, like your actual neighbours, the people you grew up with,
Yeah.
the people who are in the flats above
Yeah.
and below and to the left and to the right from you and opposite you in that space. And it was like a very obvious and clear expression of that in the stuff that existed in the kids clubs and the youth clubs, which are all just manifestations in some ways of a heart
Yeah.
for people, of an expression of love for people. And we're getting to see that expand, you know, we're getting to see that, like, that's always been a characteristic of us, but in home churches, especially, well, I'm excited about in home churches. So when I speak home churches, we have a number of these who meet around the city in various communities. And do you know, it's just great to say, so when we had a city centre church and we say, love your neighbour, but we're all coming into the city centre to
Yeah.
be in one space together. Do you know what I mean? And maybe we go back out and you actually love your physical neighbours. Do you know what I mean? But in some
Yeah.
ways it's kind of abstract. It's just like love whoever you're around, you know? But there's something powerful as stories have started to come back from the home church in Tala who started to pray for the neighbours on each side of them, like the actual people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? On the other side of the wall from where the church is gathering. It's like a concrete thing of, I'm going to love your actual neighbour. You know what I mean? I can start to think of, how do I bless that person? What do I know about them? What are their needs? How do I be the best neighbour? How can I help them out in whatever it is that they're facing? And we start to see stories coming back of those people in different spaces coming to encounter Jesus from the love of their neighbours, or of or their neighbourhood. You know, like we've done for years these things in Dolphin's Barn or in Clondalkin of the big days out and
The great big day out.
the great big day out. Sorry, I'm downgrading it to the big day out. But the great big day out. But I know this year you there's something different happening with them.
Yeah. There's loads of things that, Rob, when you speak, like, that's every time you speak, it sparks off things. But like, I know the Home Church, there was a girl that needed some help renovating her home, and they just got stuck in, the home church, like in.
I remember early days as well. I was like just looking at some old notebooks today around this, and I remember I wrote down in one, and I forgot about this, but early days of the home church in Newbridge, and they knew somebody who either had lost their job or just they were broke and couldn't meet their bills, and the home church just whip around amongst them.
I remember that.
Met the bill. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just
Incredible.
done, groceries bought or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Just those things of like surprise and love. Where does that happen? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, when the Lord just brings you on the journey that we've been on, like the amount of opportunities that people now tell you of, like what we call, like, we robbed this phrase from somewhere, but like, we're shining on your spot. That like we realize, like, that, it's not about coming into the city centre church, but it's like wherever I am, God will give me opportunities to express this.
The workplace, in the classroom, in the family, around the dinner
Exactly,
table,
like at
in the
I
coffee
always
shop.
say at the school gate, like that. There's just, and I think more and more we find ourselves becoming aware of them opportunities that God may present to us.
Yeah.
The great big day is out. Yeah, like, they're one of them things that I don't know how long we've done them for, but like I always call something, if I had my way, I'd call everything the great big something, because I remember there was 4 of us, like, going for breakfast, and I called it the great big men's breakfast, and someone says, there's only 4 of us, and I'm like, I'm not dressing up for where we're at, I'm dressing up for where I want to go, type of thing. So I always in my head, that was always a faith statement to me, the great big, not that like we just want to be big in numbers, but we want to love big, we want to love great, and that reach can impact untold amount of people with God's love. But so this year, it basically, it's like a family fun day, so it has all the elements that you would think, face painting, and we have a nail bar, and a hand massage type of thing goes on there, and then we have karaoke and a barbecue where you can get a burger or whatever, and so all games, all type of things. And in the midst of it, then there's a cafe called Hope Cafe. People can have a cup of tea, biscuit, cake, etc. And then also in Hope Cafe, you hear stories of hope, because there's a famine of hope.
Yeah.
And so we just want to give our hope stories, that this is where I was at It's where life was at. But because of the love of God, my life is different, or he sustained me through that difficult time. It's not always that there's a big miracle and something is changed, like in a, you know, I was blind, now I can see, but some of it is just Jesus walking through things with people. I was talking to a man this week that had cancer, and he says, no, Jesus wasn't ahead of me in it, and he wasn't behind me. He was right.
Well,
no, I'll be with you even to the end of the age. And I'm like, he's with us. And he is God, and he is ahead of us, and he is behind us. He's the Alpha and Omega, but that he's with us. So the Hope Cafe produced that, and then there's a prayer tent that's there as well that people get prayer for. So this year, like, you know, we had this idea of, like, it's no good if it just, you know, because I usually hold all the information in my head, and I love doing it. This is not, the Great Big Days Out are just something that I love doing. I love being involved. I love going into different places, meeting new managers, meeting new people, all the things of community centres. So, like, I never go, oh no, the Great Big Day Outs are coming up. Like, one year, Rob, we done 6 or something, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like, I just exhausted the whole church, like, in 1 year. And then, like, it's usually a kids club, a kids week that goes with them. And do you remember we done 3 in a day? Do you remember something like that? We were doing Bray, Clondalkin, and Dolphins Barn.
yeah, it's just carting people around. And
Out, like, so anyway, we learn out of everything. But anyway, this year, each of the home churches are going to run the great big giveaway in their community. So, like, it's like we're it sends, I'm giving it, or we're giving away as a leadership to the home churches, that, so it's in their community and being run by them in the home churches, and, you know, the home church pastors and the home churches. And it gets everybody sort of able to give her another pace or another, you know, rate altogether. That, like, my goal is to just step back unless I'm needed for information. Outside of that, like, you know, there's a part of me that goes, I'm not even going to turn up because, you know, I love it so much. I'm probably jumping in, but yeah, so it just, in each community, it's run by people from their community. And I think one of our goals has been with the home church, but especially around loving our neighbour and stuff like that, is that when such and such Mary walks down to the shop on Monday, that they meet somebody that has had been at the Great Big Day Out.
That's it, isn't it?
That Saturday.
It's that because you live in that space.
Yeah.
You occupy that space. You're from that town or wherever the home church is. So the chances of you then making connections and opportunities then to love people.
Yeah.
And that's all it is an opportunity to love people. Love it with free burgers, with face painting, with something good for the community to do. Do you know what I mean? It's like unconditional kind of stuff. With stories of hope from people from the same space. So yeah, it's awesome and so there's like organized things like that we do, and it helps galvanize people, and the hope is that it then sparks you know, just that. So there's that corporate stuff, right? But then what we really want to be is just like in the everyday Christian, involved in loving people in the everyday, you know, like not just, well, if I want to love people, I need to get them to a church service, or the church needs to put something on. Do you know what I mean? That's like, but that as well as that, or as the main thing, that it's like, what does it look like? You said it, to shine on your spot. When we say that, like, it means like Jesus says, you're the light of the world. Yeah. Like he speaks to us, says like, no one lights a lamp and then hides it under something so that it can't be seen. So let your light shine before men. So what's that look like in every day? But it takes a shift in thinking, right? Because some people might say, well, that's easy for you guys to say because you know what that looks like because you're pastors. Do you know what I mean? Or you're able to, like, you're around and people will ask you about God. So all someone has to do is ask you, like, what's your job or something, and then there's an in. But
that's fair enough.
How do I do that as a computer programmer, or how do I do that as a delivery driver or whatever? And it's just loving people, though. Yeah. That's the answer. Is like loving people is just so easy. Like, it's not like you have to give some big gospel presentation or whatever. And if the opportunity comes, I mean, awesome. But the opportunities to love people are everywhere, and that's what should mark us as Christians. We'll look at another episode about like love for one another in terms of within the church, but it's kind of like Jesus says effectively, this is the defining characteristic of you guys. Here's how people are going to know you're my followers, is by your love. And we want to be that church. We want to equip as leaders. What I see you doing with the big day outs, or Great Big Days Out, although you would love to keep on running them, right, is wanting to equip other people to experience the joy of what you've experienced in in loving a community.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
exactly, Rob. And I think, I don't know whether you're going to read this out or quote it, but Jesus made this, like, so we can complicate it by thinking, oh man, I'm like, say I can say, like, I'm very shy and I don't really like to talk to people. And now, like, nearly, guys, you're telling me to go now and preach the gospel to him. So, like, no, Jesus made it much simpler than all of that, right? He goes, if you give a cup of cold water.
So Matthew 25 is like, there's this parable of the sheep and the goats, right? So the setting is Jesus giving this parable, telling them what it's going to be like on Judgment Day, which sounds ominous. But basically he says he'll separate people in the same way that a shepherd would separate sheep and goats, like to separate them, like this is one thing, this is another thing. And he says he'd do it based on this. He says, then the king will say to those on his right, this is in Matthew 25, 34, Come you who are blessed by my Father, and take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. And he says, then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, I tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. And so it's that stuff of like, what do you, like, clothe people, feed people, like you see a need, meet the need. And Jesus says, the way that he's assessing us is that we do that unto him. So do you see how they're the same side of the coin when we said why he doesn't separate the two commandments? He's like, love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind and strength, and love your neighbour as yourself. To the extent that people will be like, well, when did we clothe you? When did we didn't see you in prison. I've never met you as far as I know.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And he's like, because you did it for them, you did it for me. Like it's the two sides of these things connected. For the least of these, that you did it for me. And so like there's great hope in that for the everyday. Like who knows somebody 100%. Who's hungry? Who knows somebody who has any need? Think of your office space. Is there anybody with any need there? That like practical, emotional, spiritual, physical, that you can pray for, that you can connect with, that you can meet either from your own resources or from the resources of your church.
Yeah, Rob, I loved when Jesus does, and like, because he's like, I'm giving you something that everyone has access to, a cup of water.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't have to have a big budget, big building. You don't have to have a big, I'm trying to think of something beginning with a big bank account. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to have any of that. You just, like, you can give. And like, I remember, like, and I see a thing like in some circles that I've seen recently. It's driving me mad. It drove me mad, right? Because there's people in this world that will go on rallies and marches, for inclusion, right? People that would, raise a banner to go, no, everyone needs to be included. And in their workspace, 3 young people of like in their 20s, Ostrich doesn't ask this girl out for none.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
you do the virtue signaling of like, this is the way the world should be. But how does the world get to be that way? It gets to be that way by you inviting that person to lunch.
And I always says, like I have 4 daughters, and like I used to say to them when they were in school, and especially when they were in secondary school, if you see anyone on their own that others might think they're the weird ones or they're the whatever ones, you invite them to your table.
Yeah.
And it's like a 6-year-old can do this.
Mm-hmm.
That's how easy Jesus made it, in the office, like, because where I'm talking about is an office situation. No, you sit with that person, you invite them.
Yeah.
That's showing love to that neighbour, like, or if they bring them back a coffee.
What probably stops people, it can be costly, like in the schoolyard. I mean, I've said the same to Penny. And in the schoolyard, it might be that, there's somebody who's ostracised. But if Penny goes and plays with them, well, there's a chance you're going to be ostracised too.
Yeah.
But that's the thing to do, Penny.
Yeah.
That's the thing that will matter. That's the cost.
Bit there.
Or it could be somebody who's offended you and you think, well, it's right to leave them off there. Like, but the cost is going to be, they might never apologise. The cost is you absorbing the cost of that offence and saying, I'm going to love regardless. And that's the thing that we're empowered to do as Christians, that we don't just write people off. We don't just walk away. We don't just disconnect, but we move towards people and we're willing to bear the cost. Why? Because we live in light of the greatest cost that was ever bore, like to make us right with God.
Yeah.
when we were utterly unable to fix ourselves, that Jesus like bore the cost of fixing all the gulf that was between us and God. And the more we gaze on that, the more we, I don't know,
More we
meditate, then
Yeah.
the more you're just like, how can I do anything? I'll be a
Yeah.
hypocrite to do anything less.
Yeah.
Do you know, to just
Yeah.
receive this and not give it away.
And I think just saying your yes to the Lord. I think, okay, Lord, like I work in an environment maybe the two guys don't know about. That's fine, but the Lord knows. But Lord, I'm open. It's like it's not like, just close up shop and go, well, I'd never be able to. But just like, Lord, I'm open. And it's amazing what He'll show you. It's amazing the opportunities that He now presents you. And sometimes, like, I know for me, like, I probably bypassed a couple of opportunities, but when I recognised them as opportunities, and I was like, I'm at the missing that.
Yeah.
I was nearly like, Lord, I will give another shot at this, Lord, because
yeah.
I don't want these feelings, because
Yeah.
I know that I've missed that. And He always brings it back around to some space where, and when you do it, like, Rob, I've tried my best in, like, there's very little things you can do as a human being that's absolutely selfless. There's very little, do you know what I mean? Because somewhere there's something in it for you.
Yeah.
Even if it's a nice feeling or you have something out to tell the next person. You want to say, whatever. But, when you look for those moments, even to the obnoxious person, even to the person that may have offended you or whatever, right? And you just do something in private, in secret before you and God, that sometimes something lands at their door and they don't even know where it came from.
Yeah.
And you just go, that you give me these moments of no thank yous, no nothing. Do you know what I mean? That like that week, I don't know. I feel the times I've done it, which have been few, because it's hard. Not as hard to do. It's hard to do it without getting that back. And but I guess probably in the once or twice I felt a bit like the way the Lord must feel.
Yeah.
I've done this just because I love.
Yeah.
I've done this out of the purity. Like I remember one time I was wanting through Arnott's. Like, I've told this a few times. So like I've done away in secret away before. I've no, if I lost even my reward for it, I don't care. At this stage, but like I was this woman and she was getting her nails done, painted in. It was like you could walk through the shop and coming out into Liffey Street. It was there and there. So I stand and the woman, she didn't look like my mum, but she was about the same age, and I admire her getting her nails done. I don't know whether my mum ever got her nails done in her life, and or her hand massage. And I was looking at her, and so I'm like, I says to the girl, I says it like, wow, I said to the woman like, they look lovely or something like that. I was standing, and then I says, what's that cost? And say it was €30. So I went over to the cashier, and the woman didn't know, or the other person didn't know. I just paid for it and walked outside the shop. And you know what what I would have hoped and happened? That lady would have known, wow. She probably thought it was an angel. But like, she didn't know it would have been me. Like, I don't know what was said afterwards. But that she'd go home and say to her daughter or son, what happened? And to her, I was a young man. Do you know what I mean? Like, if she remembered. But somebody just gave.
Yeah.
Do you know? And just that statement would have been a reward for me enough to go, that this woman knows that there's some people within our city that just does this random acts of kindness or something like that, with nothing in return.
Yeah.
Other than the fact I get to tell this stuff. That's probably a return in itself. But like in that moment, in that time, it wasn't, because I didn't tell anyone that for years, not even Sharon. She would have killed me for spending €30 on another woman.
You won't let me get my nails done.
You won't let me get my nails done. I'm only messing. Sharon always gets her nails done. Rob pays for it.
Well, so what we're trying to, I mean, it's just something that's in us, because I think it's something that's in the heart of God. So as church leaders, we want to try, and in as much as it's up to us, shape the church, shape the practices of the church to say, like, what does it look like for us to be the people of God, loving our neighbours 24/7? Do you know what I mean? Whether or not that builds large churches or large groups of people coming to a space to worship or whatever. Do you know what I mean? But what does it look like to love a city, to love a neighbourhood, a community, to love a road, to love our neighbour really as ourselves? There's a great example I read one time, and if you're listening to this podcast, I want you to imagine this, right? So we know that Jesus came, and he called people to follow him. You know the story. He's walking on the seashore and he sees Peter, the lad's out fishing. He's like, come follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And something in them recognises this is the Lord. Enough to say we're leaving behind our careers or whatever and we're going to follow him. I want you to imagine Jesus coming into your home and saying, come and follow me. Right? Like, so if he hadn't have appeared 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, but instead appeared in Leixlip or Ballyfermot or Lucan or Drimna or any of those places and knocked on your door and said, come and follow me. The question is this, where does he go? So leaving your front door, where does he go? Does he make it past your neighbour's house before he's moved with compassion for who's there? Does he make it off your road? Like literally, like I'm asking the question basically to say, if we were to begin to see like that Jesus has called us to follow him, now asking him, where are you going in my neighbourhood? What are you already doing in the people whose house is to the left of me, to the right of me, across the road from me? Like just imagine your road, your housing estate, your block of flats, whatever you live in. Like where is God already working in there? Where would Jesus go? Knowing what you know about him, knowing how he healed the sick, knowing how he moved towards those who are broken, knowing how he challenged the power structures at the time, knowing how he wasn't afraid to be associated with sinners and people who people looked down on, the prostitutes and the tax collectors, but was moved with compassion for them, knowing what he had to say. Where would he go on your road? You can imagine, as I think about that, immediately my mind is open to this struggle that I know this neighbour is going through, or this issue that's happening over here. And then the obvious question becomes, well, if that's where Jesus would go, and if Jesus lives in you, then realistically go.
Yeah.
So that could equally like really enthuse you, or it could terrify you. But it's piece by piece, just surrendering, like you said, surrendering to the Lord. Or I'm not sure if that's the language you use, but that's what I heard. I remember someone describing it at one stage as a dangerous prayer. Like how many of us know if you got on a bus, any random bus, and asked the Lord for somebody to love, like, and had those eyes, right?
Yeah.
You know, now it might involve you going sitting with somebody, go and talk to somebody, butting into a conversation, like buying somebody something, like hearing what's going on, you know, looking for the person who seems lonely, like whatever. But they're kind of dangerous prayers because you know if you pray them, God is going to answer them, right? So we probably just don't pray.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
we don't really want to be moved in that way. We probably just I don't know, there's something in us that just wants to be recipients of this, maybe not distributors of it. But if this is actually what counts in life, when we opened up, Jesus saying this is the stuff that matters.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that when he talks around as he judges the world, as he assesses people's lives, like who were the naked and the hungry and the thirsty who we just walk by, or who were blinded to either deliberately or unintentionally, I don't know.
Yeah.
But and what would it look like to be awoken to that? Yeah. And imagine if every Christian, just in every Christian liberty, walked like that day in, day out. Like the amount of love that would be released into the world.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And world changing.
Yeah.
Love.
Yeah, because that's what changes the world, is love. That's what the Beatles sang about. All you need is love. You know, they were like, they had this idea. It was like human, but they had an idea of, my goodness, imagine. That's what the hippie movement was about. Imagine. That's what John Lennon wrote that song about. Imagine. Do you know what I mean? And you know, I always say this. You might think we're dreamers, but we're not the only ones. Yeah. You know, because this is a dream. This is birthed in God's heart. But you know what, Rob? A couple of things. One is I had this when I became a Christian first. I'm like, I want everyone in my flats to know that Jesus loved everyone, right? Now that came out of a place of, like, Sharon would tell you this, Rob, and anyone that wants to phone, I can tell you. Sharon would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd be weeping in my sitting room on the floor, right? And if I hear, you know, after a certain hour in the flats, like, people would come in from the pub, you know, and it was there when arguments, you'd hear neighbours fighting with each other or whatever, husband and wives maybe fighting, and it wasn't every night, but the times, and somehow I'd be awakened and I'd get up and I'd go out to I'd be weeping for that. Well, even to the point, Robert, I says to the Lord one day, walking along the canal, praying for my flats, for my neighbours. I says, Lord, if they don't go in, I don't want to go in. Well, like, and when I snapped out, I says, Lord, I didn't mean that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I still want in, but I do want.
Yeah, but there was a moment, it was like God's heart that God, Jesus, I would rather die on a cross than live without them. It was that
Wow.
type of. Now, when I came to my senses, in a sense, I was like, Lord, I didn't mean that, but I don't
It's
know
like
where
there was
that.
a momentary
Yeah,
expanse of
I
the
don't know
love of
where that
God
fell
reflected
from.
in you.
Yeah,
Wow.
and so anyway, I says to an elder of the church that I was raised in St. Mark's, and loved so well in St. Mark's, loved into healing and freedom, and but anyway, so one of the elders, Peter, said, I'll come up with you. So all the week I'd be praying, right? I'd be like, praise the Lord, and in my romanticized mind, I'd be like, everyone's gonna give their hearts to Jesus, and it's gonna be like, I'm gonna knock at the door and we're gonna share, and then come Monday, like waiting on Peter to come up, because we've done it every Monday. Terror setting in, like praying that Peter would get sick or something on the way. Like, Lord, don't bring him this day, because I made a promise that I would do this. And so, but so there was this terror and romance. And then, so we went around, we started up at the far block, right? And my neighbour, so I lived in the third block, and the neighbour that lived under me, I won't name her, but then the neighbour that lived under me, I hung around with her 2 sons all my life, right? But she was up in her daughter's flat that lived up in that block. This woman could cut you in two, right? And anyway, I thought the daughter was going, this lady misses such and such. She goes, okay, you get out in here with your effing religion. We have our own effing religion, right? And Peter sort of put petrol on the fire, and he goes, well, if that's your effing religion. He didn't say the word. He says she wanted to change it. And this lady grew up to be a monster, right? And it was nearly that day, every door. Even, like, there was a girl who lived there now as a mother, like, and that I used to, me and my friend, it was his niece, and we used to babysit, and she loved me. And I knocked at the door, and she goes, no, thanks, no. And, but I lived with that sense every week. Like, it'd be like, prayer, full of faith. Come Monday. Oh, Lord, just let me miss the bus or something. But having saying that, like, it was a cost, because that opened you up for stick in this little fishbowl that I lived in.
Yeah.
But
what could make you do that, man, except love? Do you know what I mean?
Every week.
Like,
there's nothing, you'll probably do it once out of a bit of bravado or something.
There's nothing to be gained for. There's no, like, you know what I mean? You get stick for it, you get slagged for it, you get whatever. But it's like, you've experienced something of the love of God, and you're like, man, what? There's people who don't know this. There's people who don't have this. How are they?
Yeah. And Rob, like, in all of my dealings and whatever, like, I would never put myself into a bracket of, I'm this bold, brazen type of Christian. Like, honestly, I wouldn't, and I think you would probably say, I do things to do that stuff, but it's not natural. It's not natural.
Oh yeah, that's the reason I say, well, maybe, I suppose there could have been another motivation of some people just like the sound of their own voice, or like to be self-important, or like, knock on doors, I have something, But I suppose I just know that not to be true of you, saying that's that love is the only thing could actually make that happen.
Like, even when I was an elder in St. Mark's, like, I was made an elder when I was 23. I was only saved at 22. So but the reason why, like, so in church, like, what I done in church, like, because I always when I became a Christian, I something changed in my nature that I wanted to be a giver. I could never tell you what that was. I don't remember a moment, but, like, up to that point, I was a taker. And now, like, there was a change in nature that, like, and so when I went into the church, I was very quiet. I had no crutches now that I used to carry around before I got saved to give me a bit of, bravado or something like that. I was actually the least confident, like, felt like a bit like Gideon somehow. And when I went in, if people talked to me, I would just say yes and no answers. I had no confidence even to engage with people. But what I'd done was, I used to put out the chairs in Sunday school for Anna Tormey, who we know used to be the Sunday school teacher, and I says, can I go up before the class and put out the chairs for you, for the kids? That was my job. Totally. And but when I went to the flats, I'm like this weeping prophet. I'm this intercessor that didn't even know what intercession was, but, like, just feeling God's heart, and out of that crying out for these people, and then out of that stuff like that, you know what I mean, or starting the kids club or the youth club. It was never out of, come on, we window. It wasn't like out of, come on, we grow a church. When we start the church, that wasn't even in the equation. It was just like, I've been loved. Mick told me about the love of God, and I've experienced that love and I'm putting this language on it now. Back then it was just doing.
Yeah.
Like I had paramilitaries at my door, asking me to go to meetings to be seen with them, and not commanding me, what was the word? Summoned. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to, if I'm asked, I'll go, but I'm not going to be summoned. But like, because like I knew in some way there was lots of things in the balance around that community, like that was like, it was like different, but like it was love.
Yeah.
It was love that like, I was like, because nothing else could have motivated that, because I'm a coward. So
Yeah.
nothing else could have motivated me going, no, like I won't go as someone's, because that meant I came under a different element of stuff. And I'm like, no, I love these people, and the people knew I loved them, and that's why people wanted to be seen with me, because they must be all right if Noel's there.
Yeah.
And but just that fortification that love brings, that security that love brings. Look at a kid when they know they're loved in a home. They're a different kid going to school, because there's a fortification of security, and all this. I can't think of another word begins with S.
Look,
I'm a preacher, so SSS.
So we want people to shine on their spot, right? We want people to be engaged. And one of the things I think that really shapes our heart, or I know that shapes our heart, is prayer. And I know you had this genius of a thing. I have an alarm that goes off twice a day on my watch. And let you describe what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I guess, Rob, it's sort of like a man called Ed Silvolso wrote a book, and he said, talk to God about people before you talk to people about God.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a nugget of able to talk, able to be, and to do a prayer, like in that sense that like, don't go out blabbing your mouth off when you haven't talked to God about. Because when you talk to God, you get His heart.
Yeah.
This scripture, this Jesus conversation that He was having, and He said to the disciples that, like, pray and ask the Lord of the harvest to send labourers into the harvest field. And I realised that prayer and sending was just absolutely inseparable in that moment of like, so if you pray, ask God to send. It's in Luke 10:2. It's in other places, but like we picked it out 10:2. And so like, what does that look like? It looks like, that, to pray and ask the Lord. So say Mary lives next door. To pray and ask the Lord to send a labourer to Mary. And the beautiful thing about it is that what I realised, most times it's you. Yeah. You're the labourer that He sends, it's not even confined to that, but then it goes beyond all of that. It can be praying for the local school. It can be praying, like I pray for 4 things. I pray for hospitals, hospices, hotels, and hostels. And that leads me to praying for people that are sick, praying for doctors, praying for, Lord, send labourers in that know your heart, know your love into each of those spaces. And the amazing thing is, Rob, I get to meet people all the time somehow, because they're my prayer points. A fella rang me up just in recent times, and he says, Noel, we're after being in 13 schools, like in assembly, speaking about the gospel and the love of Jesus, right? So I just put in there WhatsApp of the broadcast list. Who's been praying for schools? Because I know someone that has been praying to 10-2 prayer for schools. I've been invited into like hospitals to pray with people. I've been invited into prisons, the Central Mental Hospital to pray with people. I'm there next Friday. Yeah. And it just like these prayers open up doors that a neighbour that was obnoxious becomes nicer, and you go, wow, this is my opportunity. Yeah. And the beauty of it is, so it's like, it's praying that the Lord will send the labourers in, and He does.
Yeah.
And if that, like, even when you read the scriptures, that when the church prayed in Acts chapter 10, I think, when Peter was in prison, that the church prayed and the Lord sent an angel. So even if it seems impossible, Peter was in prison. So if you have a loved one that's locked up somewhere, they're still not escapable from the love of God. And then it's Luke 10:2. So in the mornings, we set our alarms off for 10:02, one in the morning, one in the evening. And it's in one of the most amazing sights. Like me and you to be on meetings, Rob, at 10:02, especially on a Friday. And next to your alarm will go off and you're in league slip, and my alarm will go off and I'm in Ballyfermot. And Tatty Brown is there, and we just take that moment. We're back to in a minute, Tatty Brown, and we just pray. I pray for the hospitals and the hotels and the hospices. Yeah. I was at Dolores' party. It wasn't a party, it was a meal for a birthday last year. And it was about 15, 16. It was at a table in a Chinese. And like 10:02 comes, and about 6 alarms went off on that table. I could just see people just bowing their head for that moment. And it's a wonderful thing. It's accessible to us all because God answers prayer. What's yours?
So I pray for Bray.
Right.
For,
Well,
where I've been
10:02.
pastoring the church is that the Lord will send out workers into the harvest field in Bray. I feel there's people there who are, I don't know if ripe is the word, but that's what Jesus saw. That's the metaphor he used. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's a harvest. It means like people. And so look, there's a challenge to you guys who are listening. You're probably listening on your phone. Like open your phone, set an alarm for 10:02 or on your wristwatch, and why not pick somebody to pray for consistently?
Yeah.
Maybe that neighbour that came to mind when we thought around where would Jesus go leaving from your house.
Yeah.
And ask him to send someone. Now the likelihood is that he's going to send you, right? It's one of those dangerous prayers because there's it's not in the Luke version of it, but in the Matthew version of it, when it leads into the same thing where he says the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. It says Jesus looked around and there was multitudes around him, and he says they were like sheep without a shepherd. Like what's sheep without a shepherd? People just wandering all over the place, not knowing where they're going, putting themselves in danger, getting hurt, not looked after. You know what I mean? Like in all sorts of bits. And he says he has compassion on them. Like, so you see the compassion of God for people. And instead, it's really genius, I think, but instead of moving towards them in that moment, right? Like although he was amongst them, he turns to his disciples and he says, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into the harvest. Right? So instead of just Jesus going and doing it, like it's this moment of empowerment to them. He's like to them, you go and pray. Now, why does he tell them to pray? I think it's because he wants them to come to have the same heart that he had, and that's what prayer does. So that when they looked out, they wouldn't just see crowds they need to push away, or crowds they need to feed, or crowds they need to protect Jesus from, but that they would see crowds of people and have compassion. They would see sheep without a shepherd. And I know that that's the case because the next verses, so he says he sends them off to pray, and then the next verse he comes back and then he sends them out. He sends out, the 72, like the next thing. So it's like this pattern. Jesus sees something. So God at the moment sees your neighborhood, sees people around you. He would ask you to pray for God to send somebody out. But I believe that act of prayer is the mode in which we get his heart for it. And it doesn't become then he turns around and he sends us out. But he doesn't just send them out without getting them to pray first. Do you know what I mean? It's like, here's the transaction where your heart is going to come to reflect my heart. And then you're empowered and sent out. But what a practice, what a simple thing of, look, it can be a moment, just an alarm on your phone, 2 minutes past 10 a.m. and p.m. Pick somebody, pick your neighbor, pick your sister, your brother, pick someone who you know needs love, and begin to pray.
And God will answer.
God will send them out.
He will, and look, this is his word, so he doesn't say pray and I don't answer here. He's like, I'm going to answer what I've initiated. And I'll just tell you one story that I love about the 10-2. So, and there's loads, like I think we could do a whole podcast on it, Rob. There's loads of people.
Maybe episode 10.
Like, look at
episode 102.
If we make it. Like you heard Sharon share hers a couple of weeks ago. Now you're really inspired about our job place.
Everything that's happening in her workplace. Like she's just there in that space, and you realise. And then later on, you were driving her we were on another meeting. And you were driving her, she's like, I'm on into work. And I'm like, no, you're not into work, you're off into mission field.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally, she's in there loving people.
Because it came out of that 10-2 prayer, and I'm sure she prayed before that, but like that focus. But so, the great big giveaway is a Christmas thing that we do. And this year was probably more challenges in it. Like the one challenge we hadn't got this year was money. That the Lord provided money before, like,
but then every other logistic.
But every other possible challenge to doing something was there, right? So, you're in the midst of it all, and I had seen in a church, there's nothing wrong with this, right, what I'm going to say, but I seen in a church, like the building was set up, and there was candlelit, and there was carols. And I know you do as well, we love the Christmas songs. And so, like, in the midst of all of this, I was like, next year, we just do a carol service. Because how much work is
just in the middle of the pressure of the moment.
Yeah, like there was 3,000 hampers gone out to feed a family of 4 for 5 days. Like, as you said, or someone says to me, we had to move them around that much. We handled 15,000 hampers. By the time they're all moved. Whatever, So, like, anyway, and now I know, but I just said, and I said it out loud, and a girl heard me, Donna. And she says, what did you say? And I says, I'm only messing, but I said, this is where I felt in that moment. And so anyway, we done the great big giveaway, and it was amazing, and it was challenging, and all of that stuff. where I gets a phone call. So that was Saturday the 14th or something, or the 15th of December. So after the great big giveaway, we are exhausted as a church. We have given a month of air, and that week, the intensity of that week of packing all them hampers and getting them the hampers delivered and collected and all that stuff. So after that, like even the Sunday morning after the great big, that's usually on a Saturday when all the hampers are gone. Usually a Sunday morning is probably like, you know, we should just have a sleep-a-thon or something. So anyway, so that Sunday or Monday, I get a phone call from the Salvation Army in Granby Row, and I get a phone call. So like we're coming now up to the big end of Christmas in the sense of, and they says, no, would you bring in a choir, to the Salvation Army hostel and sing some Christmas songs for the guys, like, and anyway. I said, you know, I didn't even hesitate. I goes, yeah, like, so I put together, Rob, if I told you all the names, I'd embarrass them, but we were a motley crew. Like, we had a heart, but we hadn't got, like, so there's no choir. There's no choir, come on, like, you know, like, there's no choir. There's just 6 or 7 of us, like, and we're like, we found the songs, and thank God we had Sharon with us, because Sharon sang "Oh Holy Night," and Sharon is a beautiful singer, like, and so anyway, that was our little, you know, piece of, you know, that was the cream on the cake. And so anyway, we goes in, and it was just like people were doing it was an ass where they didn't even go, you know what I mean? It was like there was a few Mariah Carey wannabes, but they were males, right? But when we went in and we were in this little kitchen area, little canteen, and the broken came from the, like, wearing their battles on their face and their bodies, and we were standing there singing, and Donna turned to me together, and I said, Lord, I would not want to be anywhere in the world than here singing your songs about your coming to this earth, than we're here on with. And I prayed. My hostels is in my tent too. Yeah. And I'm like, wow.
It's an answer to prayer.
I get to be one of these labourers in this place, because obviously we sat with people, we prayed with people. It wasn't just carol, sing song and then go. It was like, these were our people. But I was like, Lord, I wouldn't want to do this anywhere in the world. I was half jesting when I seen all the lovely, nothing wrong with that. The Lord deserves it all. Do you know what I mean? So if it was in the most grandest place in the world, he deserves that. But I would not. With that, I said, Lord, I don't want to be anywhere in the world. I couldn't think of a better place to sing the songs of God, for a place that I've been praying for and that others have been praying for, well, at least for the last year. And that's the power of 10-2. You just don't know where God will lead you.
You find yourself in them spaces, don't you? Yeah. You find yourself. You start praying something, and then the Lord answers the prayer, and you're like surprised for some reason.
Boo!
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But that's what he does. Here, look, we'll wrap up. It's just out of time, but do you want to close us out in prayer, man?
Father, I just get so filled when we do these podcasts, Lord, because it's an opportunity to remember, an opportunity to express and just tell of the wonders of who you are, Lord God, what you do, and Lord, it's all about you, Father. Please make it all. Whatever is of me or Rob, Lord, we surrender that to you, Lord. But Lord, we just want to tell others we found love, and we just want to share it with others. Not because we have, come up with this as a good point or a good thing that a church should do, but that we have grasped. Somehow we have grasped some of this love, come into an experience and knowledge of this love, Lord, that surpasses knowledge. That's what it says in the Bible. This love surpasses knowledge. So don't just make it a knowledgeable thing, because it's bigger and it's broad and it's longer and broad. I thank you, Lord. I pray for every listener. I pray that 10-2, Lord, would become just something that each one. I'm like, when I start sharing this, I was like, imagine 1,000 Christians. Imagine churches all over this city praying like this. What in the world? When I hear things like happening in other churches, I celebrate, because I believe with all my heart it's a part of the answered prayer of the collective, of the multitudes of people that are praying this way. When I see people being baptized on Facebook in other churches, somehow eternity will tell us that you praying your 10-2 and prayers like it, you had a part to play in that person. You don't know where, you don't even make the connect, but Jesus does. And I pray that it will be a passion. It will be something that will fall into your lap. I pray that you'll see people this week as you listen to this who you can show love to, neighbours that are in need, that you will hear them. You will hear their needs somehow, and that we'd have just that strength and courage and love that just comes from God. Nothing that you have to drum up, but just come from God. So be blessed in the name of Jesus. I pray that you and I will experience afresh this love of God that Romans 5 says that hope will not disappoint us, that God has poured out his love into our hearts by the power of the Holy Spirit that he has given to us. So I pray right now, receive that love that makes us bolder and that brings us into the adventures of God. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Okay, till next time, be blessed.
Yeah.
Be loved. Love
See you
well.
soon. Bye-bye.